day at when the club starts to square, when that club face starts to square, and what the golfer is doing when the golfer is kind of forcing that club face to square. So we're going to look at two key parameters here. We're going to look at grip roll, and that's really the rotational, that screwdriver move.
Happen more often. So if you look at me here at the top of the backswing now, if I allow this feeling of this toe of the golf club or toe of the racket to tumble over with some rotation,
move that you are putting onto the grip of the club to twist it close, and it's a rotational number in degrees per second. And then we're going to look at closure rate. That's the club face closing relative to the club path. We're going to look at those two numbers with two highly accurate pros here, and they're going to help us kind of figure out when this stuff starts to happen. So if we scroll this guy back up to the top, our first pro, we're going to see that almost right away, very early in the downswing, when this grip roll number hits positive, we're right here at 1 degree per second, so it's just turning positive, this golfer is twisting the grip. The grip is twisting close. So that screwdriver effect the golfer is applying to the grip starts to take place way up here in the downswing. That's how early this golfer is preparing to square the face, or starting to square the face. And we can see how as we scroll him forward, how the grip roll and the closure rate really don't go on a 1-to-1 ratio. You don't get at the club face necessarily what you're applying to the grip. There's torque in the shaft, the club head is resisting the twist, all of those things are happening. So it's a really unique occurrence with all of us, depending on our equipment, the shafts that we play, our release style, our wrist angles, all of those things play a part of this. So it's not a uniform occurrence here in this closing or squaring of the club face. But what is pretty uniform is when it starts to happen. Now let's go and take a look at, we'll just scroll this golfer here through to impact, and just you can see the numbers. So we're just over 1,000 degrees per second of him twisting that grip, him rolling that grip, and right at over 250, just barely over 250 of grip closure. So we're at about a quarter of his effort, his grip roll, went into the actual closing of the club face. And it's something that you're going to see fairly often, is that it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. Those things are not the same. Early window, we'll call it our pro zone, of when these guys start to really crank on the grip of the club to start closing that face. Now, what we see in contrast is kind of through this zone here, which we'll call it our no zone, is where we see, the most common shot in golf is the open face slice. And that's because we see so many amateur golfers, especially as we start getting up in the higher handicap ranges, that they don't do enough work. They don't do enough of that screwdriver move, that reverse motorcycle move early in the downswing. And they leave themselves way too much work to do too late. Club head is moving too fast. The equipment's kind of resisting all of that. There's just not enough time to get that club face square, so they're left with an open face. They start coming over the top to try to get the ball started in a playable range. But it really, we can see it in these numbers, that this no zone range here, we'll call it, is just, it happens too late. You need to start, golfers need to start, we all need to start squaring the club face, twisting that club face much higher, much earlier in the downswing. And this isn't one of those things where the body's going to do it for us. This isn't a freebie. We have to actually apply torques to the golf club to make it square. It's not going to do it on its own. So if you want to hit straighter, more accurate shots which also is going to mean more longer shots. And you need to start preparing this club face much earlier in the downswing so we can hit the ball straighter and longer.